Your site dies every 6 hours with 0 error logs. The kernel is silently murdering your node process. The article references output Standalone, but does not note that this feature was introduced in Next.js 12 and is stable in Next.js 16. However, the standalone folder may not include all required files if your project uses experimental features like server actions or instrumentation hook. Always verify the contents of next/standalone before deploying. The article uses wget for health checks, but wget may not be installed in the node 20 Alpine image. A more reliable approach is to use curl or a simple Node.js script. Here's a health check using curl after installing it in the Docker file. The article configures PM2 with log files, but does not mention log rotation. Without rotation, logs can grow unbounded and fill the disk, causing the server to crash. Use PM2 logrotate or configure logrotate for the system to prevent disk exhaustion. Let's break down deploying Next.js 16, Vercel, self-hosting, and static export, how it works, and the exact mistake behind that failure. Deploying a Next.js app means making it publicly accessible. You can use Vercel for zero-config hosting or self-host on a VPS with a process manager and reverse proxy. Each approach has trade-offs in cost, control, and complexity. Vercel is the easiest way to deploy Next.js. Connect your repo, hit deploy, and it works. But at scale, costs can skyrocket. For a site with 500K monthly visitors, Vercel can cost $180 a month, while a $5 VPS with Cloudflare costs $12. Self-hosting with Node.js requires a process manager like PM2. It handles restarts, logging, and memory limits. You also need a reverse proxy like Caddy or Nginx for SSL and static file serving. Here's a PM2 ecosystem file. It sets the memory limit to 512 MB and restarts the process if it exceeds 600 MB. This prevents the kernel OOM-killer from terminating your app. This PM2 config sets the app name, the Next.js start script, and environment variables including the memory limit. It also enables auto-restart and logs errors to files. Caddy is the simplest reverse proxy. It automatically provisions and renews SSL certificates. The config is just a few lines. Point your domain to localhost 3000. This Caddy file proxies all requests to your Next.js app running on port 3000. It also serves static files from the public directory, reducing load on Node. Docker provides reproducible environments. A multi-stage build first compiles the app in a full Node image, then copies only the necessary files into a minimal Alpine image. This reduces image size by 70%. This Docker file uses 2 stages. The builder installs dependencies and builds the app. The runner copies only the standalone output and sets a memory limit. It also adds a health check to detect failures. Docker Compose runs multiple containers. Here we have the Next.js app and Caddy as a reverse proxy. Resource limits prevent any container from using all host memory. This Compose file defines 2 services. The Next.js app has a memory limit of 512 MB and a health check. Caddy handles SSL and proxies requests. Both restart automatically on failure. If your app doesn't need server-side features, static export is the simplest deployment. It generates HTML, CSS, and JS files that can be served from any content delivery network. No Node.js runtime required. Enable static export by setting output. Export in Next, config, TS. Images must be pre-optimized. The build output goes to the out folder, which you can deploy to any static host. On a $5 VPS with 1 GB RAM, every megabyte counts. Disable image optimization if you use a content delivery network, reduce the RSC cache, and add a swap file. Swap is slow but prevents OOM kills. This script creates a 2 GB swap file and makes it permanent. Swap gives your server breathing room when memory spikes, preventing the OOM killer from terminating Node. Without monitoring, you won't know your site is down until users complain. Set up Uptime Robot for 5-minute availability checks, netdata for server metrics, and use PM2 or Docker logs for debugging. These commands give you real-time visibility into your app's performance. PM2 Monet shows CPU and memory per process. Docker stats shows container resource usage. Logs help you debug issues. Automate deployments with GitHub Actions. On push to main, the workflow builds the app and deploys it to your VPS via rsync or Docker. SSH keys are stored as GitHub secrets for security. This GitHub Actions workflow builds the app and deploys the next folder to your VPS via rsync. Then it restarts the PM2 process. Secrets like VPS host are stored in GitHub. This is the same issue we highlighted at the start. Here's exactly why that happened. The team ran npm run start without setting a memory limit. Next, JS image optimization and RSC caching consumed memory until the system ran out. The kernel's OOM killer terminated the node process, and there was no auto restart. Running npm run start without setting node options allows Node to use unlimited memory, triggering the kernel's OOM killer on a low-memory VPS. The fix was threefold. Cap Node's heap at 512 MB with node options, use PM2 to auto-restart on crash, and add a swap file. This prevents the OOM killer and ensures the app recovers automatically. npm run start is not a production command. It has no auto-restart, no memory limits, and no logging. Use PM2 or Docker instead. Exposing Node directly means no SSL termination and no static file optimization. Always put a reverse proxy like Caddy or Nginx in front. Without swap, any memory spike triggers the OOM killer. A 2 GB swap file gives you headroom and prevents crashes. To diagnose OOM kills, check dmesc for kernel messages. Use free m to see memory usage. Verify that PM2 or Docker is running and that health checks pass. Let's run through some common interview questions. Explain 4 deployment strategies for Next.js 16, Vercel self-hosted node, JS Docker static export, choose based on DevOps expertise and traffic. What causes OOM kills and how to prevent? No memory limit, set node options, add swap, use process manager. How to design CI/CD for self-hosted Next.js. GitHub Actions, build, deploy via rsync or Docker, health check, auto rollback. And a few frequently asked questions. Why does my node process keep dying? OOM killer. Set memory limit and use PM2. Do I need a reverse proxy? Yes, for SSL and static file serving. What's the minimum RAM for Next.js? 512 MB 1 GB with memory limits and swap. Let's recap the key takeaways. Use PM2 or Docker with auto restart. Set node options to 50% of RAM. Add reverse proxy, Caddy/Nginx. Add swap file for memory headroom. Ready to go deeper? Up next, dynamic routes, route groups, and advanced routing patterns, then parallel routes and intercepting routes in Next.js 16, then middleware in Next.js 16. Complete guide with auth patterns and route handlers, building API endpoints in Next.js 16. Find them all at TheCodeForge.io. Thanks for watching. The full article and code examples are covered in detail at TheCodeForge.io.